Building your dream home on empty land. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? It gives you full control over every detail and the satisfaction of seeing your vision come to life. No more dealing with the limitations and compromises that come with buying an existing property. Plus, it's a great investment, setting you up for long-term growth. So, the big question is, how do you get started? How much can you really build on your land? Planning guidelines typically allow you to build on up to 50% of the land you own. For example, let's say you've got a plot that's 25 by 50 meters. You could build a house as large as 25 by 25. That's great. Well, actually, it's not that great because of all the other considerations you need to make. Of course, everything comes with T&Cs. So, what exactly are the T&Cs? Or in another word, the planning restrictions in the UK. Let me walk you through an example from one of my recent projects. I've developed a simple method called Bloom, though technically it's spelled Bloom. Let's dive in. The plot in this example is located in a typical residential area just outside of London. The client purchased it at an online auction for just a few thousands. While there is no guarantee it can be developed, it offers a much lower cost compared to other plots with planning permission attached, which can run over 100k. But here's the catch. Plots with permission aren't exactly a blank canvas, are they? Being in a residential area is a good sign, which means it's likely a buildable plot. But always check to make sure. Agricultural land, land within a green belt, or land in flood zone 3 may not be suitable for development due to restrictions or risk factors. Okay, great. Now that we've got the basics covered, let's see how much you can actually build. What's the maximum size you can get? Building is all about understanding the site constraints in order to make the most of its potential. To name a few, site constraints include site boundary, setback rules, and other surrounding restrictions. For this plot, it's at the end of a row of semi-detached houses. The north side is adjacent to a house. The east side faces to the street, which is its main access. The other two sides are next to a public land. You'd also notice it isn't a perfect shape, which is common in reality. Unless you're willing to deal with an awkwardly shaped house, you probably need to adjust the design to make the house more functional and regular. By doing that, you'd end up with a massing that usually is smaller than you expected. Since this is a residential area, it's important to respect the context of the existing houses. The existing houses may have a uniform style and size, or at least a cohesive streetscape. Any new development should respect this context to a certain extent. In this case, the adjacent properties are bungalows with a loft floor and dormers, about 6 meters in height. While about a block away, there are two-story houses that reach up to 8 meters. These houses could serve as a precedent if you aim to maximize the internal space. But the question is, can it actually be achieved? Now, let's test the massing against the daylight and sunlight rules, which is usually one of the first things to consider, as preserving your neighbor's right to sufficient daylight and sunlight is crucial. As you can see, the initial massing looks very imposing next to the neighboring property. Let's start. The neighboring property at number 42 is most affected, as it's adjacent the site, and that's been modeled here. The famous 45-degree rule is a quick tool to test potential daylight and sunlight impacts on your neighbors. On the plan, draw a 45-degree line from the outermost part of the houses, both at the front and back. If they extend above or beyond the center line of your neighbor's window openings, it would block too much of their daylight. In this case, the neighbor is blocked completely. To avoid this, the best option is to set the building back to maintain good daylight access for your neighbors. Now, instead of starting from our house's massing, let's move the 45-degree lines to the center line of the neighbor's window openings. And that's how we define the front and back of our house. Now, we've got a two-dimensional massing on plan. As you can see, it's much shorter than we expected, about 10 meters long. On the other side though, to maximize the house, we can stretch it to the boundary. Here we are, a roughly 100 square meter house. Not bad, but way smaller than we first thought. But is that all? Now let's look at the building in elevation, where 25-degree rule applies. Starting with the massing that's 8 meters high. We can see it still blocks the neighbor completely. What if we drop it to 6 meters high? It looks much better. There's still some impact on the neighboring property, but a 1 meter setback from the property line helps minimize it. In fact, a 1 meter setback is always useful for reducing party wall issues, enhancing privacy, and providing access to the rear garden. Back on plan, we can see there are bits and pieces we can add within the 45-degree lines after we set the house back. To maximize the house's internal area, if you want to push it with planning, you could go for a more irregular shape, as long as it's within a guideline we established. This way, you get a roughly 130 square meter house. But for the purpose of this video, let's use the more conventional massing to continue. At this point, we've got a 3-dimensional massing. Pretty cool, right? If you enjoyed this video so far, please consider to subscribe. Now let's follow the typology of the neighbors and create a similar house. On the ground floor, we have around 116 square meters of internal space, plus front and rear gardens. On the loft floor, we could achieve an additional 100 plus square meters of habitable space, making this a spacious detached house. Remember to account for additional planning requirements, such as outdoor space, sufficient natural light, parking, waste management, and so on. So what have we learned? By following my Bloom technique, now you've given yourself the best chance to obtain the planning approval at the next stage. And that is my Bloom technique. Thanks for watching and see you next time.